everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into some of the most important laws, regulatory agencies, and key terms every pharmacy technician should know. Because whether you're already working behind the counter or still studying for your certification exam, understanding these legal and ethical guidelines is crucial for ensuring patient safety and providing top-notch care. Think of it like this. Pharmacy technicians are like the guardians of a vast library of medications. Each prescription, each over-the-counter remedy has its own story, its intended use, its potential risks, and its specific instructions. And just like librarians need to know how to navigate the Dewey Decimal System, pharmacy technicians need to be well-versed in the rules and regulations that govern these powerful substances. If you're using our Pharmacy Technician worksheet, this video will guide you step by step so you can understand why each concept matters. We'll break down complex legal jargon into bite-sized pieces, explore real-world examples, and highlight the crucial role pharmacy technicians play in upholding these standards. So grab your notebooks, put on your thinking caps, and let's get started. First up, let's clarify two common but often confused terms: adulteration and misbranding. These concepts are all about making sure that the medications we dispense are exactly what they claim to be, both in terms of their contents and how they're presented. Adulteration deals with the product's quality, strength, or purity. Imagine a bottle of aspirin that's been improperly stored and is now less effective, or a batch of cough syrup that's been contaminated with bacteria. That's adulteration. The medication itself doesn't meet the required standards, making it potentially dangerous for patients. Misbranding, on the other hand, refers to incorrect or misleading labeling. Think about a prescription bottle with the wrong patient's name on it, or a box of allergy pills missing crucial dosage instructions. Misbranding focuses on the information presented about the drug and how inaccuracies could lead to mistakes. Understanding these terms helps ensure patients get safe and correctly labeled medications. As a pharmacy technician, you're on the front lines of preventing these issues, so you've got to be vigilant in spotting potential problems. Next is the FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration. Now, the FDA might sound a bit intimidating, maybe like a giant bureaucratic machine, but in reality, they're kind of like the unsung heroes of public health, working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure the medications we rely on are both safe and effective. The FDA oversees the safety and efficacy of a huge range of products, drugs, medical devices, and even some foods and cosmetics. Basically, if it's going in your body or on your skin, chances are the FDA has had a hand in regulating it. And their reach is vast, covering everything from clinical trials to post-market surveillance. In pharmacy, we often see the FDA's role in approving new medications. They scrutinize research data, analyze clinical trial results, and ultimately decide whether a drug is safe and effective enough to be made available to the public. But their job doesn't end there. The FDA also monitors adverse events, those unexpected or potentially harmful side effects that might not show up until a drug has been on the market for a while. And if a serious problem arises, the FDA steps in with the power to recall products, pulling them off shelves to protect the public from unsafe or ineffective drugs. So imagine the year is 1914. The Titanic has just sunk, World War I is about to erupt, and the United States is grappling with a different kind of crisis: widespread narcotic addiction. Opium and cocaine, often found in readily available tonics and remedies, were causing significant social and health problems. This is where the Harrison Narcotics Act comes in. This landmark legislation, named after its sponsor, Representative Francis Burton Harrison, aimed to regulate the production, importation, and sale of these addictive substances. It wasn't a complete ban, but it did impose a special tax on anyone involved in the narcotics trade, from manufacturers and pharmacists to doctors and dentists. The idea was to track these drugs more closely and hopefully curb their non-medical use. While the Harrison Act had its limitations and unintended consequences, it marked a turning point. It was a significant step towards recognizing the potential dangers of narcotics and the need for government oversight. Plus, it paved the way for future legislation that would further refine how we control substances with a high potential for abuse. Think of it as the first, albeit imperfect, attempt at tackling a complex issue that we're still grappling with today. But the story of drug regulation in America doesn't end there. In fact, it's just getting started. Let's move on to another piece of legislation that dramatically changed the landscape of pharmacy, the Durham-Humphrey Amendment. All right, picture this. It's the 1950s. The Cold War is heating up, Elvis is rocking around the clock, and you could buy pretty much any medication over the counter at your local drugstore. But this anything-goes approach to medication was about to change, thanks to the Durham-Humphrey Amendment of 1951. This amendment, sponsored by Senator Carl Durham and Representative Hubert Humphrey, drew a crucial line in the sand, dividing the pharmaceutical world into two major categories: prescription and over-the-counter drugs. Before Durham-Humphrey, it was a bit of a free-for-all. Need antibiotics? Just grab them off the shelf. Want some powerful sedatives? No problem. This amendment recognized that some drugs were simply too dangerous for self-medication. They required the supervision of a healthcare professional to ensure they were used safely and appropriately. Enter the era of the prescription, that little slip of paper that determines which medications we can and cannot access without a doctor's orders. But Durham-Humphrey wasn't just about creating two categories of drugs, it was also about providing critical information to consumers. The amendment mandated that all prescription drugs carry the now iconic warning caution. Federal law prohibits dispensing without a prescription. This seemingly simple label was a huge deal. It empowered patients by making it clear which drugs required professional oversight. The Durham-Humphrey Amendment was a game-changer for pharmacy practice, establishing a system that aimed to balance patient access with safety. It fundamentally changed the way we think about and regulate medications, a legacy that continues to shape healthcare today. But the road to safer medications didn't end there. Let's talk about another pivotal moment in pharmaceutical history, the Kefauver-Harris Amendment. The year is 1962. The world watches in horror as the Cuban Missile Crisis unfolds. Marilyn Monroe tragically passes away, and a new kind of crisis is brewing, a pharmaceutical one. A drug called thalidomide, initially marketed as a harmless sedative, particularly for pregnant women, is revealed to have devastating side effects, causing severe birth defects in thousands of children worldwide. This tragedy shook the world and exposed a critical gap in drug regulation: the lack of rigorous testing for both safety and effectiveness. Enter the Kefauver-Harris Amendment, a direct response to the thalidomide disaster. This amendment, spearheaded by Senator Estes Kefauver and Representative Orrin Harris, significantly strengthened the FDA's authority by requiring drug manufacturers to prove not only that their products were safe, but also that they actually worked as advertised. No more empty promises or marketing ploys. Companies now had to back up their claims with solid scientific evidence. The Kefauver-Harris Amendment also tightened the rules around drug approval, mandating more rigorous clinical trials with a greater emphasis on patient safety. These trials had to include a larger and more diverse group of participants, and researchers were now required to obtain informed consent, meaning patients had to be fully aware of the potential risks and benefits before participating in a study. This amendment was a watershed moment for the pharmaceutical industry. It ushered in an era of stricter regulations, increased scrutiny, and a greater focus on patient well-being. The legacy of Kefauver-Harris is evident in the rigorous drug approval process we have today, a system designed to prevent another thalidomide-like tragedy. But as we'll see, the quest for safer and more effective medications is an ongoing journey. Okay, so imagine a ladder with 5 rungs. That's how the Controlled Substance Act, or CSA, categorizes drugs, based on their potential for abuse and whether they have accepted medical use. At the very top, Schedule 1, you have substances with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Think heroin or LSD. As you climb down the ladder, the abuse potential generally decreases. Schedule 2 drugs like oxycodone or Adderall have accepted medical uses but still carry a high risk of addiction. Then you move through Schedules 3, IV, and V, each with decreasing levels of control. Pharmacy technicians, you're on the front lines. You need to know these schedules inside and out to store, handle, and dispense these medications safely and legally. Now let's talk about rare diseases, conditions that affect relatively small numbers of people. It sounds niche, but we're talking about millions of people worldwide facing serious illnesses. Developing treatments for these diseases can be a tough sell for pharmaceutical companies. The research is expensive and the potential customer base is small. That's where the Orphan Drug Act swoops in. This act throws a lifeline to these companies, offering them financial incentives, think tax breaks and even temporary market exclusivity, to encourage them to invest in research and development for these orphan drugs. It's a great example of how legislation can directly impact patients' lives, providing hope and potentially life-saving treatments where there might have been none. Okay, picture this. You order a pair of shoes online, but when the package arrives, they're obviously fake. Frustrating, right? But imagine that happening with your medication. That's where the Prescription Drug Marketing Act, or PDMA, comes in. This law is all about keeping the pharmaceutical supply chain secure. Think of it as a series of checkpoints and safeguards to make sure the medications that reach patients are the real deal. Safe, effective, and exactly what the doctor ordered. The PDMA tackles things like regulating drug samples, preventing the reimportation of medications back into the U.S. market, and cracking down on counterfeit drugs. It's about protecting patients from potentially dangerous products and maintaining the integrity of the pharmaceutical system. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with these acts and amendments, but trust me, understanding them is crucial in the world of pharmacy. And this next one, HIPAA, is like the golden rule of handling patient information. You know, it's kind of like that friend who's super careful about not spilling secrets. HIPAA, which stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, is all about protecting patient privacy. We're talking about any information related to a patient's health, their treatments, even their payment details. It doesn't matter if it's written down, stored on a computer, or just spoken aloud, it's all protected under HIPAA. So, as a pharmacy technician, you're on the front lines of safeguarding this information. That means being careful about who can see patient records, making sure conversations about their medications are private, and really understanding how to handle sensitive data securely. And listen, I get it. Sometimes all these rules and regulations can feel a little overwhelming, like trying to memorize the entire periodic table in one sitting. But remember, these laws are in place for a reason: to protect patients and ensure they receive safe and effective care. Plus, when you understand the why behind the what, it's a lot easier to remember. So take HIPAA seriously. It's not just about avoiding legal trouble, it's about building trust with your patients and upholding the ethical standards of your profession. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a law with a very specific target: the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act. Now, you might be wondering what this has to do with pharmacy, but trust me, it's more connected than you might think. This act focuses on substances like pseudoephedrine, which is found in many common cold and allergy medications. Sounds innocent enough, right? Well, here's the catch. Pseudoephedrine can also be used to illegally manufacture methamphetamine. Not great. So to combat this, the act put some pretty strict rules in place. Think of it as a way to control access to a potentially dangerous ingredient. First off, there are limits on how much pseudoephedrine a person can buy within a certain time frame. That means no stocking up on decongestants, no matter how bad your allergies are. And it's not just about quantity, it's also about identification. Pharmacies have to ask for and log your ID when you buy these products. It's all about creating a record and making it harder for people to buy large amounts anonymously. And look, I know it might seem like a hassle to jump through all these hoops for a simple box of cold medicine. But the thing is, these measures are really important for curbing the production of methamphetamine, which has devastating effects on individuals and communities. So the next time you're dealing with these over-the-counter medications, remember the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act and the role you play in upholding its guidelines. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of laws and regulations designed to keep medications safe and effective. But what happens when something goes wrong? Enter MedWatch, the FDA's safety reporting program. Think of it like a giant feedback loop for medications and medical devices. See, even with rigorous testing, sometimes unexpected side effects pop up after a drug hits the market. Or maybe there's a manufacturing issue that compromises a medication's quality. That's where MedWatch comes in. It allows healthcare professionals, patients, and even concerned citizens to report problems directly to the FDA. Now you might be thinking, reporting sounds like a hassle. But trust me, it's crucial. Every MedWatch report helps the FDA identify potential safety signals. They analyze these reports, looking for patterns or unusual trends that might indicate a bigger problem with a specific drug or device. And this isn't just about paperwork. It leads to real action. Based on MedWatch reports, the FDA can take steps to improve drug safety, like requiring manufacturers to update labeling with new warnings, issuing safety alerts to healthcare providers, or even recalling dangerous products from the market. So yeah, MedWatch, kind of a big deal. Speaking of recalls, let's talk about how the FDA classifies them. Because, let's face it, not all recalls are created equal. Some involve products that pose a serious, immediate threat, while others might involve minor labeling discrepancies. To help prioritize their response and communicate the level of risk, the FDA uses a 3-tiered classification system for drug recalls: Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. Now, a Class Y recall is the most serious. We're talking about situations where there's a reasonable probability that using the drug will cause serious adverse health consequences or even death. These recalls require swift action to remove the product from the market as soon as possible. Then we have Class 2 recalls, which involve products that might cause temporary or medically reversible adverse health consequences. The probability of serious harm is less than with a Class 1 recall, but it's still a cause for concern. These situations often require corrective action, but maybe not a full-blown removal from the market. Finally, we have Class 3 recalls. These involve products that are unlikely to cause harm but violate FDA regulations in some way. Think of it like a technical foul in basketball. Not ideal, but not a game changer. These recalls might involve mislabeling or packaging issues that don't pose a direct threat to patient safety. So that wraps up our whirlwind tour of pharmacy technician laws and key terms. We've covered a lot of ground, from adulteration and misbranding to the ins and outs of MedWatch and drug recalls. And while it might seem like a lot to remember, trust me, it's all connected. These laws, amendments, and agencies work together to create a safety net for patients, ensuring that the medications they rely on are safe, effective, and properly dispensed. As a future pharmacy technician, you'll play a vital role in upholding these standards. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more pharmacy content, and be sure to check out our pharmacy technician worksheet for a chance to test your knowledge. Until next time, keep those brains sharp. And remember, knowledge is the best prescription for success.